Every client I've ever worked with at one point or another has asked me this question. What is going on with cash? That's a good question. That's a good one. There's probably a lot of reasons, but it's under my belief, and having seen this multiple times in practice, I believe when we present the financials, the three statement financial stack, gap adjusted, the way it comes in P&L, balance sheet, statement of cash flows, that question is the very bottom line. So that means I have to unpack all these different accruals and timing differences with respect to GAAP accounting to more or less answer the question. And the founder oftentimes is just looking at me like, wait, what? What happened? I mean, they're expecting like charges, transactions, like, and it's just there's just too much to unpack to give them a really strong answer. Enter the 13-week cash flow. That's what's on my screen. And I built a product patterned off of it, designed to be a little better, more useful, faster, automated, all that good stuff. I'll get into it. For those who don't know what a 13-week cash flow is, look at it like a weekly cash basis P&L, right? The books close on Friday. You enjoy your weekend. Monday, you get to your desk and you have this software package that's going to unpack all things with respect to your cash picture, horizon, helpful indicators, and even toggles to help you plan for the future, faster, real time. It's kind of why it's called current. And my company's called Amp Finance, current, lightning bolt. Okay. So, I mean, looking at this screen right here, it should be pretty easy to see the cash picture, right? Cash in, the last actual week right here, 60,000. Cash out, 20,000. The net cash, 40,000, sandwich right in between beginning cash balance, ending cash balance, and you can more or less see that week over week. All right. What we do though, instead of reading raw transactions, I can categorize this. AI is really good at doing deterministic reasoning from your raw transactions. So as long as it can extract that information and it looks pretty similar week over week, it can organize that kind of similar to your P&L. This client here only has Stripe, but if you, for example, were working with Shopify or you had, invoices coming in, you can organize it that way. Maybe Cash Out gives you a better understanding. You can see, people, right? You can unpack that. You can see what's going out with payroll, benefits. You can see, some of the main selling and marketing vendors you're working with, other vendors you're working with, G&A charges. I also layered in credit cards, and it's not impacting ending cash. It sort of is impacting ending cash because you have to pay your credit card. But for transparency and to see things, I have it organized by like category themes, spending themes. You can then drill down. You can see the different departments. And this is a ramp card, so you more or less can see who's charging things. And then you can drill into what those transactions are and get an idea. So there's some cool things that I wasn't able to provide and produce before using Excel, but it's patterned more or less the same way. Also, for my visual picture loving friends like I am, you have a nice little week over week synopsis of what's going on with respect to ending balance and the net cash. The net cash is the purple line, and how that is trending out into the future, which let me talk about that real quick. After this green line is the future, and it's trending based on a growth trajectory, and I can set that. Some are flat, some are using 4-week growth, some are using 8-week growth, some can use a year growth to get the real growth pattern, but it's also using pattern recognition based off the last 13 weeks, so it actually does a pretty good job of planning the ebbs and flows of the business. Good example of that, let's look at people, right? It's a bi-weekly cadence. We can see that, and then we have it more or less flat, but the bi-weekly cadence of those charges are somewhat intact based off the pattern recognition. You can also see that further displayed, maybe, you know, G&A charges. You can see, for example, we're paying our loan back every couple of weeks, or another example would maybe even be paying our credit card. Historically, we're paying that on average, every other week. So that's all there. That's really cool. But what I'm excited about is actually how you can do rough, scenario planning. Let me show you that now. You open up, you have a new scenario, and let's just do some mixing. You come into Stripe. Let's just say, for example, we want to, this trajectory looks pretty good, this little spark line here, but let's say we want to make it flat. Let's just see what that looks like. You can see it goes flat. And all right, we do nothing. We're running out of cash by like June. That's probably not the goal. I'm going to reset that. Let's say we're actually good with Stripe. But what we can do, since this is a scenario, we have different toggles. Scale is moving things up and down, and you have to select which week you want. You can do that, and it just moves up and down. But I have this trend button where you can apply it to everything. So every week is now highlighted, and we can actually move the trajectory up or down. So let's just say you want to maybe tweak it up or tweak it down. Let's just say we want to tweak it down, maybe 10%. Save that, see how that looks. We're golden. Let's say other. We don't want those in there. You can actually just hit this 0 button, save, we're good. Another feature, let's go into cash out. Let's say we want to pretend we're hiring people, right? Let's get back to where we're at now, which is the green line. That's more or less where we're at now. Let's say Q4. That's not Q4. That's Q2. Let's say we want to assume we're going to hire people, right? We can select both these. Historically, oh yeah, we got to pick the week in which we want to do it. Historically, it's been around $76,000 every other week. Let's say 2 new people we're working to bring on. These are really good hires. Let's just say it jumps up to 30,000, right? And what you can do is you actually put this forward thing, so you can now apply that same logic all the way forward, because you're now going to incur that new expense week over week, and we're good. Other things you can do, let's say because we're hiring people, we're not going to pay this charge anymore. So let's just say we're going to 0 that out, save. However, let's say maybe one last payment here of negative. Let's just say we have to, I'm just putting a number in there. This is all just, I'm making this up. So there you go. That's some things you can do to get like loose planning. You can see how fast I'm doing it real time. Other things, let's say nothing against these guys, they're great. But let's just say, for example, you, for some reason or another, you don't want to pay it and you want to push it out and maybe just pay it right there. You can save that. Likewise, if you want to maybe bring this guy in, you can do that. So really quick on the fly adjustments. Good stuff. So what you can do now that you have this scenario plan, you can write notes, you can jot stuff up, you can print this out, but you can see also what it looks like compared to our base case. Ooh, looks like we dip low, so I might need to do a little bit of tweaking, but more or less the little ghostly shadow figure is base. I also have like a little tooltip that pops up and you can see that. So quick little things you can do, help founders out. Lastly, what I want to talk about is the summary. This is an AI write-up, but it's also a Postgres calculation doing some analysis that I feel is going to help unpack the usage of cash. I have these cards. The top row here is more or less just talking about cash in, cash out, ending cash, operating cash flows, results, and it's comparing it week over week. Here, which I think is pretty cool, I'd love to get your opinion on this, it's momentum, right? What this figure right here, the $72,700 figure, is the average cash receipts, not cash inflows, cash receipts over the last 4 weeks. What does that look like compared to the last quarter? And what does that look like compared to the last 6 months to help give some sort of indicator of what we're doing on average, a rolling average week over week compared to what we historically have done, to let you know maybe early on, hey, we're slipping, or hey, we're doing better. All that monitoring that you've been doing on cash and discretionary spending, it's paying off, you can see that like with outflows, right? I mean, and it changes week over week, but this week, over the last 4 weeks, it's around 87,000, which is on par with what we've been doing quarter over quarter, but a little bit improved, looking back 6 months ago. And then you can see the OP results. You can see it's, about 34% better, and you can actually see it manifest even better when you look at the runway. Right now, based on what we're doing, based on our ending cash, we have about 55 weeks of runway. You know, over the last quarter, that was a lot better. You based on more receipts mostly coming in, but over the last 6 months, it's better than burn was then projected. So it's cool little indicators. Also, there's like an AI write-up. I mean, you can read some of this. I can maybe pause the screen, but here's just an example. Net cash swung from a burn of 61,000 last week to a positive 40,000. 101 improvement. You can see momentum is deteriorating, which I kind of just talked about, as receipts declined and net cash decreased compared to the last 13 weeks. You have a little key takeaway, what to watch for next. And then you can get to a more detailed analysis, which is kind of week over week facts. Momentum, this is more or less what I talked about. Operating results average 14,695 the last 4 weeks versus you know, 8,000 week over week the last quarter. So, a little bit more spend on average or net burn on average, but better compared to the last 6 months. Here's cash runway, read out a little bit. You can see ending cash today, 807 over the last 4 weeks. Burn average, 14,695. That's about 55 weeks of runway. Over the last 13 weeks, that had been down to 8,000, which, gives you a lot longer runway. But over the last 26 weeks, you're doing a lot better. 22.3 was that burn, which is based on this ending cash balance here, about 36 weeks of runway. So it also talks about drifts. What are the main, drivers of what spend items are having the biggest drift or the biggest improvement up or down compared to what historic baseline's been. That's more or less what's being calculated there. And in the future, I'm going to actually have, cash predictability. I'm going to do a budget versus actual versus the already existing trend, and then things that are coming up like big spend items. I haven't actually built that in yet, but it's coming. Let me know your thoughts. That's more or less it. I'm happy to have a conversation with people, maybe some critiques, maybe some areas for improvement, or if you want to test this out with one of your clients, or if you're an operator interested to see how this could impact your business. Like I said, I tailor this for your business specifically. I can, drive all the levers and then pulleys in the background. So let me know your thought, guys. Okay. It's Friday for me. I'm going to have a good weekend. Take care, guys. Bye.